Human Path. We've just finished the Wilderness First Aid Certification Intensive, and I'd like to have him share a little bit about about his program with you. Sam, can you tell our viewers a little bit about what we've done here?
Sure. So this is a 3-day program that includes about 16 hours of Wilderness First Aid certification through ECSI, and then an additional 8 hours of herbal first aid that's integrated in. So we talk a lot about basic first aid for trauma, environmental injuries, some medical emergencies, but mainly for trauma. That's the primary focus. But also in an austere medicine situation, austere environment, or post-disaster or remote, where there may not be any higher definitive care available. How can we use herbs? In particular, how can we use herbal medicine or botanical medicine for things like wound management, infection management in the field, wound care, wound healing, acute infectious disease, some types of shock, certain types of shock. How can we use herbs to either mitigate or even some cases actually replace what we would be able to do with pharmaceutical medicine? And so there's a lot of aspects to this course. There's a lot of common sense. There's a lot of survival skill type of things, and certainly a lot of herbalism, especially functional, what I would call very functional herbalism in an austere environment.
So that's something that people could use not just in a true wilderness environment, but if there's a disaster and they can't reach hospital in an urban environment, that could also potentially be something that could help out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, honestly, it's something that will help you in your clinic no matter where you are. Even in the middle of a first world strip mall, office space or whatever, you're still going to be a better herbalist for knowing more about biofilms, for knowing more about infections, for knowing more about anaphylactic shock, for knowing more about acute infectious disease of the upper respiratory tract or the urinary tract or the digestive tract or anywhere we're talking about the mucosa. All of these things make you a herbalist and make you better, I think, at being able to integrate what herbalism does, in my opinion, best in the way that we integrate with sort of those big holes in modern kind of orthodox medicine. There's a lot of holes in the safety net there that I think herbalism fills very well, and so it helps us be better at that as well.
Now, how did you come to have both of these field medic skills and the herbalism skills? How did you bring that together, and where did you come from with your history there?
That's taken a long time. I've been doing this about 28 years, and started in my medical background in orthodox sense, started in the military as military medicine. I was a special forces medic, which is kind of like a cross between a paramedic, a nurse practitioner, and like a field trauma, as in a combat medic or combat paramedic, and a nurse practitioner in regards to all of the decisions you have to make in the field, where you might have a medical director, but they're as a doctor, but maybe they're 1,000 miles away or 2,000 miles away, and so you have to make a lot of these decisions. So it's a lot of it's very austere medicine involved, and of course a lot of teaching involved in that too. That was my orthodox medicine beginning. Herbally, I started prior to that, even in naturopathic schools. I was interested in that, and mostly self-taught. Then after that, I mostly took those concepts of orthodox medicine and I applied a deeper and deeper understanding of pathophysiology on a cellular level, on an organ level, on an organ system level, whatever it might be, to be able to really apply pathophysiology. What's really going on in the tissue? What's really going on? And this can be chronic. What's going on in the thyroid? What's going on with the follicular cells in Hashimoto's or hypothyroidism? That we know there are other things that, of course, play a role there too. But specifically at that cellular level, what's going on? And those are the kinds of questions I tried to answer over years and years and years, and working then with hundreds and thousands of clinical cases eventually over the decades, to be able to try to see what works and what doesn't, what works great, what works kind of, and why, and so it's sort of this, like, I think everybody that's involved in botanical medicine kind of goes through this stair-step process, and trying to figure out what is the best empirical sort of values we can get back through just a lot of what I mean, honestly, not to say this caustically, but it is with a lot of trial and error, less error, and maybe almost no error that's dangerous in most cases, as long as you know what your red flag areas are. But there still is something, there's going to be always things that work and things that don't, and so herbalism, I feel like, has always grown in that way, and that's kind of been my own journey too. It's like it's always just grown one step on top of the other in terms of understanding pathophysiology from a standpoint even of a paradigm of plant medicine, constituent theory, and how plants work on even a deeper level, on an emotional, on a physical, on a mental, and on a spiritual level. There's all of this as living medicine. So it all kind of comes together, and you have to really kind of be a jack of all trades, and that's kind of what my whole life has been.
Absolutely. I was going to say, it sounds like you're really kind of weaving together several disciplines that are constantly evolving. Just as you were saying, that's something that kind of keeps growing.
Right.
And as I've learned in the last 3 days, you never could go in expecting a set of responses. Every emergency is going to have a unique
Right.
dynamic where you'd be applying a number of different practices to help a person to get to higher care.
Absolutely. And then you add in adrenaline to that. And so how do you react to it? And you're right, every single emergency situation, that's why I love it. I love emergency medicine, because you never get the same thing twice. You always are going to have a set baseline as to what you're expecting to get people to, like, so get your baseline, and you need to get them to this level, and you have a certain baseline set of techniques that you might use, in a repertoire of understanding. But that doesn't preclude the fact that this is a human, an individual that is going to have their own set of responses based on who they are, how old they are, what their physical, capabilities are, and shape, and what kind of even just physical shape they are in, what their age is, what their actual injury is, and how deep it might be, and what you may or may not be able to even perceive on that. So it's just a huge, kind of diorama of information that we have to sort through as best we can, and usually under a lot of adrenaline, or at least some adrenaline.
Right.
And I feel like that's what medicine is. It makes medicine so beautiful to me. That's what I love about medicine.
Even in practicing today, the amount of adrenaline I felt, the stress in responding to pretend scenarios, you can tell that it really complicates a situation. So having skills that you practice over and over, it really, I can see why that would be helpful.
Yeah.
To be able to face these situations that are essentially unknowns every time.
Right. I always tell people, and you may or people may or may not understand this if I just say it this way, but I always tell people that emergency medicine is a lot like fighting, a lot like the discipline of martial arts. And indeed, we have the four pathways, plus one that's kind of unwritten, the leadership and teamwork, but the four pathways, the foundational pathways of our school. Medic is one of those, and medic is our relationship to our body. With how do we help the body, how do we hurt the body? Not because we want to hurt the body, but because out of, for self-defense and for security, we need to understand that. And I've always said that, no matter how long you train, for instance, in a certain discipline of fighting, and ultimate fighting, and mixed martial arts has proven this. You might be Muay Thai, and you might be Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and you might be, some form of karate or whatever it might be. But when you're actually fighting with somebody, any number of things can happen. Anything can happen, and it's always changing. And on the reverse side of that, on the body, how we help the body. And this kind of goes back to my own roots of interest, which were Chinese, Taoism, being able to work as the idea of the Chinese Taoist monk that was a healer, but also was very adept physically, with her body in self-defense. And so that same idea applies though to emergency medicine. There's always something different that's happening, and the adrenaline of that is very similar too. Because here you're trying to fighting to maybe save a life, right? And the adrenaline itself, it's something that you learn to channel, and so it's no longer really something that binds you up or that makes you think. You can kind
of put it to use.
You can channel it, and you can really. I mean, when you get to the point, and I've been here, and I love this feeling when you really channel that adrenaline into the casualty or the victim or the person, the patient, whatever that you're working on. That's an incredible feeling, and the feeling when it's successful is out of this world. It's out of this world when you save a life.
I know you've gone to a lot of areas that are post-disaster. You mentioned being in the post-hurricane environments in Texas.
Right, yeah.
You've gone abroad and helped in a lot of scenarios. And I understand you have a school in Texas, in Austin, Texas, the Human Path.
It's in San Antonio, actually.
Thank you.
Yeah. Austin,
San Antonio.
Stay away from town, Austin.
Oh, my bad there.
Just kidding. No, Austinites out there. No, it's San Antonio, north of San Antonio. We have a 50-acre campus north of town. And this is called the
your
Human Path.
students go, right? And
yes.
I'm sorry, can you say again your school?
Yeah, the school is called the Human Path. You can see us at thehumanpath.com or .org or .net, all of those. And we have an organization called Herbal Medics. You can see us at herbalmedics.org, how we work with training at a didactic level. We have probably 2,000 hours of online didactic information, not just herbalism, but also water purification and hygiene and sanitation and off-grid power and all those things. But primarily, 90 to 95% of it is herbal medicine. That's didactic. And then we have intensives where people come, they've learned a certain amount of didactic, they come down and they really get to practice what they've learned in a hands-on environment. And then we have all of the kind of scenario-based training then too. And then from there, with Herbal Medics, we go out to the real world and we're able to actually do something. So all of that training goes to being able to actually do it when you're face to face with people who are in need, who want help, need help, whether it's setting up a water filtration system because their water's bad, which is affecting the health of the whole community, or whether it's working with sustainable agriculture and teaching how to grow their own food and medicine, or most of the time, a big part of it is actually a big component is the largest component is the herbal medicine itself. So we have clinics and of course medicine making, and our entire medicine making, advanced medicine making program is a huge part of that. Not just medicine making, but a clinical apothecary, how we run clinical apothecaries. How do you run a clinic and how do you run an apothecary and how do you make all of these pieces, kind of merge to where you're self-sustainable as a team? That's important too. You're not reliant on somebody else for your food. You go into post-disaster area and you walk in there, just waltz in there as a team, or you do a few people that are just thrown together, hodgepodge, and you can't even take care of yourself. You're putting more burden on them, right?
Sure.
We saw this with the protest actions and with the actions in Standing Rock when we did a clinic there at that camp there as well. And we were able to say, look, we're totally self-sustainable. We come in and we don't want to put a burden on your food or your water even, or anything that you're doing. We want to be able to just come in here as a self-sustained unit and then help people, from there. So it doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't cost you any money, time, food, energy. We're here to help and we're here to take care of ourselves as we do that too.
That's fantastic. I can see we've had members here from the communities, both herbal and then kind of survivalist groups, emergency preparedness groups, and I feel like the course really accounts for all of those things and kind of merges our interests together in a way that I think is very fulfilling, especially for people who want to help in a community environment. So I feel like, I mentioned earlier to Sam, I feel like I have more questions now than I did coming into this because there's just so much to learn, but I feel like you've given us a wealth of information this weekend. I feel like at least I have some hope I can offer help to people, and especially as our community's environments are changing. In California, we're dealing with more fires seasonally. We're dealing with floods that can result from the fires once the rains come. Yeah. Of course, we also have earthquakes, so it's great to be able to be having someone like you who's coming to our communities, traveling all the way to Los Angeles area to help us be prepared to better serve our communities in that way, which is just amazing. So thank you so much for taking time to speak with me and to share with the community what you're up to here. I appreciate you coming all this way. My name is Mandy Gough. I'm with XoM3 Botanical Solutions and Roots of Healing. You can find us as well as The Human Path online on Facebook, social media, and on our websites. Thanks for your time.